maybe you know this already, okay, and maybe you remember it from that last video that we watched, okay. We're going to be, when we multiply two integers, right, multiply two numbers, I would say the first thing, and a lot of the books will say do this at the end, but I'm going to say do it at the beginning, right? Determine the sign of your answer, okay? What sign is it going to be? And just remember these two rules. If it's a positive times a negative, that equals negative. Negative wins, okay? But if it's negative times negative, that equals a positive, okay? So let's look at our two questions here. Before you even start, step one, is the answer positive or negative? Look at the first one. I have a negative and a positive. Negative and a positive. That's going to give equal a negative. Okay. And actually, I'm going to write it in red so we know this is negative. Okay. And then look at the other one. I have a negative and a negative. What's my answer going to be? Positive or negative? Right, look up here. It says negative, negative. If I have two negatives, my answer is going to be positive. Now, usually we don't need to write the plus sign, but I'm going to do that just so we know. I'm going to put it in green as well. So now it says step two. All we need to do is ignore the signs and multiply as usual, because I know this is going to be negative, so I'm just going to multiply as usual. 22 times 12. 22 times 12. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. Add a 0. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. Let's add those together. 4, 6, 2. So my answer is 264, but remember it is negative 264 because I have one negative. Okay, there. All right. And then the other one, we said it's going to be positive 8 times 4. So we're just going to multiply 8 times 4 equals 32. And so my answer is also going to be just positive 32 because remember, negative, negative equals a positive. All right, but what happens if you have three or more integers, right? You can't just use the negative and a negative make a positive, and the positive and negative make a negative, because you have three or more, okay? So here's the rules for those, okay? So step one, always the same, determine the sign of your answers, okay? If there are an even number of negatives, okay, even, when I think even, okay, I'm going to write this up here, even would be, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and we can keep going, and even 0 as well, actually. So if there are no negatives, it's going to be even. So if there are two negative numbers, it will be even. If it's four negatives, or 6, or 8, or 100, or 500, right, it would be even. Okay. And then if it is an odd number of negatives, right, odd number. So if we think of odd as one, we start at 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, then we can go 11, and then we can keep going to. So if it's an odd number, your answer will be negative. Okay. So let's look at both of these. Let's look at that first one. Negative 6 times negative 4 times negative 1. Is your answer going to be positive or negative? How many negatives do you have? I have two negatives, one here and one there. I have two. Two is an even number, so my answer is going to be positive. What about the next one? Is your answer going to be positive or negative? Negative 7 times 2 times negative 8 times negative 1 times 3. What do you think? All right, well, I have 1, 2, 3 negatives. 3 is an odd number, so my answer is going to be negative. And then now we can solve. So in this first problem, we're just going to ignore the signs and multiply as usual. So I have 6 times 4 times 1. And I did forget to mention in the other videos that these are multiplication dots, okay? We don't use x's as much when you get older because an x could be confused with the letter x. So we use a dot. All right, so let's do 6 times 4. Let's do orders of operation. 6 times 4 is 24. And then 24 times 1, that would also be 24. So our answer is a positive 24 for this one. All right. What about the next one? Why don't you try it yourself first? All right, so we know it's going to be negative, so let's just multiply and pretend that the signs are not there. So let's pretend they're all positive. And now if you really wanted to, you could cross out the 1 because when you multiply by 1, it doesn't really do anything, but we'll keep it there. Let's do 7 times 2. 7 times 2 is 14. Okay, times 8 times 1 times 3. Okay, 14 times 8. You might have to do that one by hand if you need to. That's 112. Okay, 112 times 1 times 3. 112 times 1 is 112 times 3, and that will give us 336. Okay, remember the answer is negative, so make sure you write negative 3, 3, and 6 right there. All right, let's keep going. All right, so what happens when you have exponents? Exponents, okay? Like this, we got negative 3 to the 5th power, negative 3 to the 4th power. What does that mean? Do you remember? See if you can figure it out, and then we'll review. Okay, so one thing that this is not negative 3 times 5. This is a very common mistake that I've seen, right? That would just be confusing. So it's not that. What this is negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. So there's 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's like 5 negative 3's, and we're going to multiply them all together. So now that I have 5 negative 3's, I know my answer is going to be odd because 5, oh, I'm sorry, my answer is going to be negative because 5 is an odd number. So negative 3 to the 5th power is going to be a negative answer. Okay? And then if we multiply this all together, we'll just multiply it and pretend that the signs are not there anymore. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay? And then 9 times 3 is 27. And then 27 times 3 is 81. I'm running out of room. 81 times 3 equals 243. But remember, it's going to be a negative 243. Okay. Now in this other one, do you think your answer is going to be positive or negative? If you guess positive, you are correct because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be having three sets of negative 3. So this 4 kind of is a clue. Okay, right? I know my answer is going to be even. Oh, I'm sorry, it's going to be positive because 4 is even. So this is like saying negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Okay, and remember step 2, just multiply them, pretend the signs aren't there. And we already did this. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 would give us 81. But remember, it's a positive 81 because of the 4. Okay? So be careful when you see those negatives pop. Oh no, those exponents pop up. And finally, let's end on a real world problem. Follow along as I read. A hummingbird flies forward or backward from a bird feeder. Use the formula P equals VT to find the position. So P is the position of the hummingbird relative to the bird feeder for the given velocity V and time of flight. So we got two parts to this. The hummingbird flies forward with velocity 17 feet per second. So that's the velocity for 2 seconds. What is the position of the hummingbird? Remember, position is P. So we want to find P. See if you can solve this yourself. How'd you do? All right. So I need that formula, P equals VT. It says, what is the position? I want to know what P is. So we need to know the velocity and the time. Okay, the velocity is 17 and the time is 2 seconds. So I can multiply them. When two letters or variables are next to each other like that, that means multiplication. 17 times 2. So its position would be 34 feet. Okay, 34 feet. Right, this means it's at 34 feet ahead, right, of the bird feeder. And what about the next one? The hummingbird flies forward with a velocity of -9 feet for 4 seconds. What is the position of the hummingbird, the p? Same thing. Pause the video. See if you can plug those numbers into the formula and solve. All right. Again, p equals vt. We need to know what is the position of the hummingbird. What is the velocity is -9 and the time is 4 seconds. So -9 times 4. Is your answer going to be positive or negative? Okay. Well, I have a negative and a positive. I have one of each. Which one wins? Negative times a positive equals a negative. So 9 times 4 is 36. So that means the hummingbird is maybe behind the bird feeder because it is negative. Behind it, maybe 36 feet. All right.